Morning guys, Scrappy here again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Finally, a big development here in this Rostermania period, with rumours now starting to emerge. The reason for the big hold-up over the last few days may well have been Los Angeles Thieves targeting an absolute super team. We know that OpTic and FaZe are going to be good going into next year. The big discussion was, would Cloud9 secure Scrappy, or potentially could Los Angeles Thieves consider something of a heist in this Rostermania saga? That seems to be what they're trying to do. But will they have the money or the resources to actually pull something like this off, bringing HyDra off Cloud9, bringing Scrappy all the way off Toronto, potentially Envoy as well? Where is the money coming from, Mr. Shot, if they're going to try and pull this off? But the players, of course, probably would be down for this to occur, and it seems like if any organisation is going to be able to pull it off, Thieves may be the most likely. Very much into your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Couple of good impression farms here from ReeaL as well on the whole saga itself. Of course, current coach of the Subliners, but he actually said in one of the replies here that he currently doesn't really have a gig anymore, so it's kind of unclear what Cloud9 are going to do, what some other organisation might potentially do here. But look, let's just dive straight into some of the roster updates, starting with Gunless, actually, unrestricted free agent for the new season. Of course, a phenomenal player in his day, and maybe his day is still here on some level, but look, he's maybe not the player that he used to be. Infinite Warfare, World War II, that timeline, he was absolutely phenomenal when he first came into the league, and over the last few years it's been more up and down. Of course, he did have another stint this season on the Minnesota Rocker, that then concluded at the end of the year. It wasn't a great run. Gunless was okay. Maybe if the team was better around him, he could have looked a little bit better. But yeah, he's not going to be on a roster guaranteed for next season, but he is an unrestricted free agent, or at least he has that going for him. Anyone can pick him up effectively for free going into next year. This is another update as well, Boston Breach. They've decided, it seems, to effectively run it back with their World Cup roster. Maybe not a massive surprise, but it is interesting nonetheless. They did okay at the World Cup, to be honest. They did, win a couple of games in their groups. They looked a little bit more competitive maybe than I thought that they might at the tournament, to be fair. Of course, that was the team of Snoopy, who stays, Awakening and Cammy on the ARs, and then Purge on the secondary SMG to Snoopy. And they did look pretty promising. I liked the AR duo. I liked what Cammy was bringing in the communication. On some level, this is, them using their academy, because Cammy, after his time on Thieves at the start of this season, went down to the academy roster effectively of Boston, and then has been brought up to the starting team. They went to the World Cup, they did okay, it was nothing spectacular, but it seems like Boston have potentially decided this is the team they're going to stick with going into the new year. Could they have done, better than this? Are there some upgrades out there? Sure. It seems like they're happy enough though with how things are going, and also I guess they've got to realise that they've not got all the money in the world to spend nowadays as they did before. Last year they were throwing around, $400,000 bags, the rumour was, for Envoy. Envoy said no, decided to go to Toronto instead for less money, but obviously that worked out for him probably better in the end, didn't it? So, Boston, this is apparently going to be their team of 4 going into next year, which is, it's not going to be a world beater, shall we say, but it is a team maybe with some upside potential. Maybe they feel that Cammy and this set of players, maybe Purge, are the right guys to get the best out of Snoopy, because they've tried multiple players to do that over the last year or so. Nothing has exactly worked and gone to plan. So yeah, Big Wake staying along for the ride as well. Definitely a player that had a down year on his standards. If next year is better for him, which it probably will be, then there's some promise there. So I think the Awakening pick is, quite nice. I see some promise here in a way, because Awakening is one of those players that you're kind of like getting him at a low point, if you know what I'm saying. Like, he's had a bad season. Probably no other organisation better than Boston is going to go out and sign Awakening, although certainly last season that would have been the case. One of the absolute top slayers on the AR role. This season not the case though, so Boston are taking a bit of a bet that Awakening will bounce back to a better form next year, and if that's true, then maybe this team has more upside than we might believe that it could do. But let's talk about the big one though, right? The big Rostermania update coming out of last night. HyDra, Envoy, Scrappy and Ghosty, a potential super team here on 100 Thieves. Now, where has this come from? Is this legitimate? Is there any chance of this actually coming true? So this comes out of Breaking Point last night. Not exactly exactly clear, who the sources are, where this is coming from precisely. But to be fair, some other guys kind of chime in and say, look, there is some potential truth to this, or at least the truth in the interest of this being the case. The chances are probably still rather low, because look at the team, but let's just go through it kind of one by one. So this is apparently what we know. HyDra and Scrappy would like to team up. No real surprise there, right? I said it just after the World Cup. If you're HyDra, if you're Scrap, you've got to try and get on the same team, because OpTic are nice, FaZe are nice. Like, if you don't team up, I think, either player will live to think, well, if I was teaming with Scrap, or if I was teaming with HyDra, then maybe we'd be winning more events. So, that is no real surprise. The question is, where has it been possible to even do that? It didn't feel like Subliners were really ever going to entertain a buyout for HyDra, but to be fair, Cloud9 as an organisation, they have operated in the past in other esports slightly differently, so I think there is an opportunity there for Cloud9 to potentially be willing to sell. Obviously, Toronto willing to sell Scrap, but it's like Toronto are not going to have the money to fork out to buy HyDra and bring him the other way, so therefore in our head it was like, well, the only realistic possibility is Scrap to Cloud9 and they buy him out, because Toronto aren't probably going to have the budget to commit to bring HyDra on board there. Of course, what if another organisation though had the budget to do both? That then would be a very interesting possibility. Now, of course, according to sources, this would require multiple buyouts and would be nonetheless challenging from a budget perspective. 100T, no surprises there. Other deals can and potentially will still happen, but this would be fascinating, right? Ghosty is going to stay, no questions about that. We are 99% sure that Nastie is gone and that Kremp is gone. JoeDeceives, you would think, is potentially in the ballpark to stay as well, but I guess the feeling would be that potentially Envoy would be a better fit there. He gets on well with Scrappy based on what we have seen. A HyDra Envoy SMG duo I actually really like the sound of, to be fair, given the way that Envoy can complement an incredibly fast-paced SMG. But that really is the question. Where's the money coming from? Is there a realistic chance this actually happens? Because as Roddy says, JCap must have been on to absolute supermax, because now that his contract is gone and JCap's no longer the head coach over there, now apparently they've got bags to spend trying to put this roster together. So this is the understandable question initially, before we talk about what the roster would actually be like, is, alright, do they have the money to do this? Because as Merc says, the team that spent no money, really, I mean, okay, they didn't spend minimums last year. It was probably like 100k, 120k per player or something. Like, it wasn't absolute bare minimums, but Thieves obviously cut their budget back, and now they've got money to make something happen. Of course, the other point will be that if these buyouts go through, the players themselves are not going to be able to be salaried on an insanely high level. The players will have to, more than likely take some sort of a pay cut in order to allow this to happen. But, look, Merc says they got top 4 with spending no money. Now they're going to spend all the money after they didn't re-sign their World Championship core. Shout out Nadeshot subscribers. And Ben says, yeah, pretty madness, right? Now, are they correct, Thieves, in thinking that, let's say they ran it back with that team that came top 4 and then top 2, right? The Kremp, Nastie, JoeDeceives, Ghosty team. If they go into next year with that team, they showed a lot of promise. They could continue to improve. Sure, is that team of 4 going to be a championship winning team? I'm not so convinced that it is. I think next year, OpTic and FaZe are still going to be there, and obviously there's also the risk, if you do that in your Thieves, that Scrap and HyDra team up on Cloud9, and then all of a sudden your chances of winning probably go out the window. So maybe you need to preempt that to some degree and step in. So Ben says, look, who is the source on this? If they're anonymous, what is their relation to the subject? Kind of, wondering what is the angle on all this stuff. So Ben says, I don't doubt these players see this as the logical third super team. But Ben's prediction is it's not going to happen. There's just too many moving parts here to make this happen. And he says, wonder who leaked it. I don't think it's fake. So, he reckons it's real. It's just there's 3 organizations involved here making this happen. Do they feel like it's realistic to actually make this work? Like, seems pretty maybe unlikely on some level. So there was some reaction to this, some discussion really on exactly what it might take for this deal to get done. Because we talked about what the buyout for Scrappy might be. Obviously, the buyout for HyDra will probably be very similar. We're talking, maybe 250, 300k each. Then you've got Envoy thrown into the mix as well, you're talking potentially up to $700,000 pure buyout to get this team to occur. Then you've got to pay salaries on top of that. So, that's the question, and of course there's so many moving parts, but it does make some sense if this was to be true as to exactly why things have been taking some time to do anything, because not only are Cloud9 in negotiations probably with Toronto for Scrappy, but now Thieves are hopping in as well and saying, all right, we'll throw our hat in the ring, we'll try and come up with some sort of relationship that works here. And obviously what the players want is also relevant to some degree as well. Ghosty, I'm sure, is going to be, buzzing for this possibility. And obviously Envoy, the return to Thieves, might make a fair bit of sense as well. So it's very difficult to say right now exactly what the most likely outcome of this situation actually is, where Scrap, HyDra might potentially go. I think the biggest surprise to me is the possibility of HyDra actually getting, bought out off of Cloud9. It was a talking point before when he nearly joined OpTic a couple of years ago that he might well end up over there, the 95% likelihood and all that stuff that eventually never came true because OpTic decided to run it back. But now it's possible potentially that with Cloud9 taking over, HyDra might be gone from that team. And what do they do then? I mean, imagine if you're New York, effectively you lose HyDra. Like, what do you do with your roster? You've got Skyz, you've got Kismet, and where do you go from there? I mean, you're not bringing Simp back, but arguably both of your two most talented players have now gone. So then what do you do? Jake Hell's perspective, though, is that this situation is possible, he says. Like, there's context that needs to be added. It's a possible move that could happen, but obviously it requires a lot of maneuvering from multiple parties and buyouts and various other factors as well. So it is a really interesting one. Nage had actually then replied to this tweet and kind of said, he got paid $34 for basically tweeting for the last month. So that's going to go to fund the budget. So it's interesting that Nage responded to this, right? Like, it's difficult to read into Nadeshot's perspective on anything really when he tweets stuff. Like, would he reply if this was real? Maybe. Would he reply if it was fake? Probably. So, I don't know. I don't think it's fake precisely. I just think the likelihood is pretty slim that this might actually go through. But intrigued your thoughts in the comments, right? And it was an interesting take here, I thought, from Parasite on how good that team might have been last year. As he says, if that rumored team was the team in Modern Warfare 3, they might not have lost a single hardpoint all year. And, TJ says, I think they would have lost more than one. So that's, classic stuff from TJ. And obviously they would have lost something. But, and to be fair, Envoy for like a stage and a half this year was basically a complete non-factor in hardpoint. I don't really buy the idea that team would have been unbeatable. But, Scrap and HyDra would be, in many respects, the scariest duo probably in the game. Certainly from a new duo being formed. Then you put Ghosty in the mix as well, how good he's been and with the potential that he's shown, and then you need a great fourth to complement HyDra. Well, Kismet's an option. We've seen that works. Obviously, CleanX as well is something else to consider. I feel like a CleanX HyDra duo could work, but it would probably be a bit too inconsistent. So I actually really like the idea of Envoy. It's just like difficult to make it happen, right? Because there is money involved at the end of the day. And, it's going to be a challenge to make this work if it's even possible at all. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
Hey, Tony, what do you think about the whole situation? What do you think about this LA thing? You think it's actually going to happen? That's what we're just kind of talking about right now. Tony, like, is this actually happening? Like, are they actually going to spend this much money on this team after having a year where they didn't spend?
I think it has to be. I think in order to get those three, you're looking at 600 to 700K, just in my mind ballparking, because it's like Scrap can walk in a year. I'm assuming Envoy can too. So they'll probably take, in my opinion, like 250, 300 for both, just if they're trying to cut spending. HyDra's the question mark. It's like, I don't know what his contract looks like. If he can walk in a year, then once again, Cloud9 might be like, okay, we'll take 200 for him. So I think at the absolute bottom line, you're looking at 500K for all three. I would say 600 to 700 gets it done. But then the players would need to take pay cuts, because there's no way I see Thieves paying that much money and then paying these guys like inflated salaries. That'd be crazy.
Which is why, Ben, they should entertain it. Because I remember you were like, nah, there's no, like, they might not even entertain it. You should entertain it. I mean, if this is who your superstar player wants to play with, why wouldn't you fucking entertain it? I mean, look at who he wants to play with.
The first thing I thought, though, is that now other teams know HyDra is potentially an option. There are some teams that might have just sort of written HyDra off that could see this tweet and might be like, oh shit.
Well, Minnesota is the most interesting team in this whole situation, because they're sitting there. G2 is a full history of spending money to fucking win championships. You can look at any esport for that. Obviously, in order to pull this team off, they have to buy out 4 players. But if any other org in the fucking scene is going to spend $2 million to pull this off, it's going to be G2.